Good day, everyone. Eric Olsen from Helps Law Firm on today, October 13th, 2025. Glad to have you here. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. My name's Eric. I'm the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay. And I'm glad to have you here. Our most important message to seniors and disabled persons is that federal law protects your Social Security, your pension, your disability, your VA benefits. It can't be taken from you by a debt collector if they sued and got a judgment. There's even a law put in effect in 2012 that protects twice the amount of your federal benefit deposited into the checking account, regardless of what funds are in there. Twice the amount you get each month is protected automatically, even if you got money from some other source and if they sued you. So you don't need to worry about losing your money. Okay? So, what we do is you can put questions, you can type them in the chat feature, I'll answer them there. Or if you like, or I will also have questions that I've written out before or that people have called in or they've written in, okay? Uh, so the first one is a person from California. They said, are debt relief programs legitimate? Okay. Now, if you've been listening to me a while, you've heard me talk a lot about debt settlement and debt management programs. With rare exception, these companies won't tell a senior that their income is protected. They won't say, hey, by the way, uh, your Social Security is protected, so is your pension. No one can take it. It's protected in your bank account. Nor will they tell a senior there's a way they can stop the creditors from harassing them with what's called a cease and desist letter. Instead, they sign them up, put them into debt management or debt settlement, often making payments that they simply can't afford to make. Okay. Um, Please let me know that you can hear me. Okay. Um, Now there are a few that will tell a senior their income is protected. Not very many. Some of those even refer people to helps. So if you're wrapped up with a debt management or debt settlement company, and you're a senior on Social Security or a pension or both, and you were never told when you enrolled with this company that your income was protected, you weren't be given you were not be giving you were not been given the complete truth about your situation. Okay. Marty asked Eric if I if I got a debt collector, it's like Midland Credit Management, not over $600, and I'm on Social Security, I don't have to worry about them taking my truck or nothing, do I? No, no, no. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors. If they get a judgment, the extent of what they're going to do is maybe try to garnish a bank account, even if they do that, which might be unlikely. But as far as them coming after personal property like a car, most states have, almost all states have exemptions on different types of property. Like, for example, so much equity in a car. But even if you have equity in a motor vehicle over and above the state exemption where you live, it's simply not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after your vehicles or stuff like that for a lot of different reasons. It's expensive for them to do it, uh, and there may be someone else's name on the title. They simply don't do it. Okay. So Richard asks, Eric, the process server called to say he's coming with two separate summons, one for me and one for my wife. She's out of state. Do I have to accept her summons? Well, in most states, a process server can serve anyone at the home where the person's being sued lives, maybe if they're over a certain age. So they're going to serve it on you whether you like it or not. because I'm pretty sure in your state, a husband can or a wife can receive a summons on behalf of a spouse. Okay. Once again, if you've been sued and your income is protected, you can't really do anything. When a helps client is sued, uh, we ask you to get us a copy of the lawsuit, and then we're going to send a letter to the attorney who sued you, um, letting them know that your income is protected. You can't afford to pay the bill. We understand they're going to get a judgment. We're going to call you on the phone, explain why you don't need to worry, send you a form letter that has links to laws and articles and why you're going to be okay. Okay? So you're going to be fine. Don't need to worry, Richard. So here's a question we get occasionally. Can they send you to jail for these debts? There's no debtor's prison in the United States, at least not anymore. You're not going to go to jail if you don't pay your debt. You don't need to worry about that. But I'm surprised how many people worry that they would go to jail. No, you won't. You won't need to worry about that. Okay? This person contacts us from Tennessee and they say, uh, my debt is current but overwhelming on just my Social Security and my pension. Well, I understand, but you don't need to worry. If you just get Social Security and a pension, both those monies are protected. Social Security has been protected ever since 1935. Your pension is protected probably under a federal law called ERISA, Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. And even if it's not protected under that federal law, there'll be a state law that protects your pension. So if your current debt is overwhelming, you could choose not to pay your credit cards or these loans. You could use the money for your food and your medicine. Now, when people contact helps, one of the things we're going to ask them, do you have a credit card with a small balance or nothing so that you still want to keep? And occasionally a client will say, a person will say they have that. And you could keep a credit card if you still have one that's a smaller balance. As long as you keep making the payment, as long as it's not backed by a bank with whom you have another account that you're not going to pay. Okay? So this person contacts us from Oregon. We are around 35,000 in credit card debt at the current interest rate. Uh, the current interest rate on our credit cards averages about 24%. Our rent has increased to $11.75 per month, from $11.75 per month to $18.15 over the last 5 years. We are both on Social Security, and my wife has a pension from Oregon, PERS, Public Employment Retirement System. So the rent has gone up at a much higher percentage than their uh, what they got in Social Security. Um, it costs us over $1,200 a month to pay the minimum amounts due. Neither of us can work. Wife is in a walker, and I'm her only caretaker. We own no real estate. Please send me information. Thank you. And we will, and we'll be able to help them. And if that's your situation, we can help you. So they got 35,000 in debt, which they're paying $1,200 a month to keep up on it. They can't afford it anymore. They get so they get Social Security and they get a pension, which is all protected. Okay, so they don't need to worry. That we'll call them and go over this with them. They're going to be fine. Yes, what should we do? Well, I mean, when a person enrolls in helps, we're going to tell you can stop paying your credit cards. Even if you're thinking about it now and you understand that your income is protected, you could stop paying it now. You don't have to be enrolled in helps to stop paying your credit card debt. You could stop immediately if you want to. And then when you enroll, you're going to give us the creditors you owe money to, their name and address. We're going to send them out a cease and desist letter, and they're going to stop bothering you, or they won't bother you since when you enroll in helps. Okay. One thing I was going to say, that the rent's gone up pretty high. I know a little bit about Oregon. They passed a law several years ago that, if I remember right, it restricted the amount that rents could be raised. And I think it was like 10% a year or something like that. And when they passed this law, I said to myself, gosh, that's a mistake. It's almost like the legislator was inviting landlords to raise rent 10% every year. And I said, if they do that, people's income that are retired on Social Security, their income doesn't go up by 10%. Okay, it goes up, 2 or 3%, depending on what inflation is. And sure enough, occasionally I'll talk to people where their rent has just gone up astronomically over the last few years. So in an attempt to restrict rents and control landlords, the legislator actually accomplished the exact opposite. Anyway, my opinion maybe. If you work part-time and collect Social Security retirement, I have a pension but not fully retired yet. If I get garnished, could you put your excess income that might not be protected in a 4? Yeah, you could do that, but you could put your excess income if you get Social Security. Now, I don't know that you're getting any excess income. Okay, you say if you work part-time, in every state, $217.50, $217.50 net per week. That's about $435 every 2 weeks, or about $950 a month, is protected automatically from garnishment under federal law. And then a lot of states prevent a lot more than that, and some states don't even permit a garnishment. Okay, so then no one's going to be able to likely be able to take your part-time work. And if you take your income from your part-time work and you deposit in your account to which Social Security goes, remember, twice the amount of what you get in Social Security, that sum is protected, even if some of the money in that account came from another source. So, Wendy, if you got $1,500 in Social Security, $3,000 in your bank account is protected. You could put it in your checking account. Don't need to put it in some other place. Okay? I live in a tiny house on wheels with a mortgage. In Tennessee, will my home be protected in Chapter 7? Well, almost every state has what's called a homestead exemption, which is amount of equity that's protected in bankruptcy. And so you've got a tiny house on wheels. I don't know if it's on land or if it's on that you're buying or if it's in a park. And I don't know off the top of my head what the homestead exemption is in Tennessee. This is single non-elderly filer is $35,000. If you're uh, but it's simply, you know, I probably did 30, 40,000 bankruptcies before I started helps. The reason I started helps is because a lot of seniors simply didn't need to file bankruptcy, couldn't afford to file bankruptcy. Or sometimes if they filed bankruptcy, get them in trouble because a bankruptcy trustee could go after non-exempt assets. Whereas if they didn't file bankruptcy, general creditors won't do that. Um, So you may want to talk to us when we go over your options. Okay. My Medicare health insurance premiums are reimbursed by charity. Would that be subject to a judgment if it's deposited in the same account as Social Security? Um, as long as the balance in the account doesn't exceed twice the amount of Social Security you get each month, it's protected. And then you don't even have to worry about it unless someone were to sue you, get a judgment. And even then, they'd have to know where you work or where your bank account is. So it's unlikely there's going to be a problem, Tweety Bird. I'm a HELPS client already. I also have a pension, but I'm not fully retired yet. If I'm able to get my pension in a lump sum, is the lump sum protected? Depends on the state. Okay. And we might have to check that out when you let us know. So this person contacts us from India, from Indiana. Sorry. We have contacted you a few times, but my husband has been in the hospital and not feeling well. We would like to move forward with getting started with the program. Please advise what we need to fill out. Thanks. Just contact me. Um, thanks. Just contact me. He's still not up to much. Thank you. Well, okay. Um, you don't need to fill anything out when you enroll in HELPS. If you've got a question, you're not a member of HELPS, and you can call us on the phone at the number down below here. Where is it? Over here. 855-435-7787. Talk to one of the attorneys or paralegals that helps. We'll ask you some basic questions. And sometimes people call 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they decide to enroll. Cost is minimal. Most a person would pay normally would be $40 for 24 months, $20 for 24 months, free thereafter. It could be as low as $20 for 24 months, $10 for 24 months, free thereafter. So you can call us and we ask you questions. We fill out a form on the computer that's secure. And then when you decide to enroll, we can click a button while you're actually on the phone. And you'll get an email from HELPS saying, welcome to HELPS. It confirms you're a member of HELPS. Has all our contact information, address, phone number, email addresses, and it gives instructions how to get us the collectors you don't want to hear from. All we need is the name, address, and account number. We don't need the balance. And then within 48 hours, we're going to send out a cease and desist letter to that debt collector or debt collectors you owe money to so that they leave you alone. But in the meantime, when we hang up the phone and you've gotten that email confirming you're a member of HELPS and we keep you on the line till you get that, if someone were to call you, you could refer them to us. If they called us right then, you're going to be in our system as being our client. So you don't need to worry. Okay. So I made an agreement with the IRS to pay them $30 a month. I have fallen behind on that agreement because I can no longer pay this debt. I also have credit card balance of 40. They increased my credit. So you probably don't need to worry about the IRS debt. You can pay it if you can, but if you can't afford it, if you're a single person, your income is around 2,500 or less, or you're a couple 3,500 or less, maybe even a little bit more, you can often qualify for what's called currently not collectible, CNC status with the IRS, where you don't have to pay them anything. However, if you owe a small amount of taxes and you don't pay the IRS, they may send you notices, but they're not going to try to do anything to collect. Now, if they were, about the worst the IRS would do is send you a notice saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security after 60 days. That would give you enough time to contact the IRS and get on a monthly payment plan. Okay? Uh, or get on currently not collectible status where you don't have to pay them anything at all. Okay? And you don't have to worry about the credit card debt. You don't have to pay them at all if your income, Social Security, or pension. No, look at some more of our videos or call us on the phone and talk to us. And we'll go over this with you. You'll feel a lot better after you talk to us. What information about the original creditor is the original creditor allowed to pass on to the debt collection agencies if they sell your debt? Probably anything they know. I don't think there's any restrictions on that. Anything that's going to help them try to collect the debt. It's usually not a whole lot of information. It might be just your contact information, the amount you owe. Maybe if they know where you bank, they might have a little box where they fill that in. I don't know. But remember, nothing can happen to your bank account unless you were sued, and then they'd have to wait a while before they get a judgment. That could be 30, 60, 90. It could be months down the road. And then as long as you have just one bank account in which Social Security goes, then that account is protected up to twice the amount of what you get in Social Security or other federal benefits. So you're going to be fine. Person contacts us, says, I'm a senior citizen from Florida with low income Social Security, credit card, and payday loan debt. So they get Social Security, which is protected. They get a pension or a retirement check. That's protected. They got credit card and payday loan debt. So I'll talk about paydays for a second. Payday loans. Payday loans are high interest loans where you pay it, at least every semi-weekly or every 2 weeks or once a month. The interest rate can be in the hundreds of percent. Okay. Now, if you've got a payday loan, you're on Social Security or a pension, you don't have to pay it. You could choose to stop paying it. Now, and then if you're a member of Helps, you give us that creditor, we're going to send them a cease and desist letter. But sometimes payday loans are based on Indian reservations or they're based overseas. So that sometimes they advertise if they're an overseas payday loan that that's something special. The reason they do that is because if they're not in the United States, and that includes an Indian reservation because some federal laws don't apply to an Indian reservation, if they do that, then you don't have they don't have to follow the law in trying to collect from you. They can threaten you, say you're going to jail, or say all kinds of things. Okay, so uh, payday loans can be more aggressive than other creditors. But once again, your income is protected. You don't need to worry about it. I have a debt that is beyond the statute of limitations. Will they still come after you for my past debt? Maybe. Okay. What does that mean, statute of limitations? That means under state law, the lender you owe money to, credit card company or loan or whatever, has a certain amount of time to file a lawsuit to collect money from you. Okay. It could be 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. It depends. They have to do it within that time. Now, if they don't do it within that time, they could still try to collect from you. They just can't threaten or file a lawsuit legally. But I've had people tell me that they've been contacted by creditors that they owed money to from over 20 years ago. In fact, I remember last week I read one. He sent a copy of the letter, and the last sentence in the letter said, by the way, we can't sue you because this debt is over so many years old. But before that, they were talking to them about how they needed to pay the debt and tried to talk them, hoping maybe they would wait. They would contact them before they read the last sentence where they let them know that they didn't really have to pay the debt, that there's nothing the creditor could do to collect from it as far as filing a lawsuit. They can get a judgment and a subsequent lien on your house, though, right? Well, it depends on the state, but we don't see that as being a huge problem in a lot of instances. I'll explain why. Some states have unlimited homestead exemptions. Texas, Florida, pretty much, Kansas, Oklahoma, the Dakotas. It depends on the state, but a lot of states have an unlimited homestead exemption now, which means they're not going to, if they get a judgment, it could be a lien, but there's a procedure to get the lien removed depending on the state. In some states, the only way to get the lien removed may be filing a bankruptcy. In other states, there's a state court proceeding to get the lien removed. And then some states have different amounts of exemptions that are protected, like California, 700,000 no matter what county you're in. Could be more, but 7,000 minimum at least. And then maybe you own the home, husband and wife, and the debt is just in the husband's name, but they own it with survivorship rights. And so if the husband got sued and there was a judgment, yeah, it could be a lien on the home. They're not going to take the home. But if he passes away before the wife, then the property automatically goes to the wife and the judgment lien disappears because the lien is only a lien on property that the person owns. And if you die and you own property with someone else, at your death, if the property goes to that other person, your spouse, for example, then you're dead. The lien, there's no longer a debt owed by you because you're dead. The judgment is gone. There's no lien on the house, so your wife owns it free and clear from any lien on a judgment that you may have had. I've been getting text messages from a credit collector. Unified is their name. I'm not familiar with this company. They asked me to call them back. Well, I don't know. I would be surprised if there's not over 1,000, maybe several thousand collection agencies in the United States with different names. You don't have to call them back if you don't want to. If my Social Security is protected, why do I need helps? Good question. Um, I, if I had, when I first started helps, I used to go around and talk with groups of people. And sometimes I would ask them, there might be 50 in the room, how many realize that their Social Security was protected? Maybe 1 out of 50 would raise their hands. A lot of them never had any idea it was protected. Just because it's protected doesn't mean that they can't call and send demand letters, or they can't sue or harass you. Okay, they can do that. And if they can't collect, they can turn it over to a different collector. So when I started helps, I was doing, thousands of bankruptcies, and seniors would come in and I explained to them, you don't need to file bankruptcy. Your income is protected. No one can touch your Social Security or your pension. But I knew when I sent them home, the creditors were going to call them and make their lives miserable. And no matter how much I told them that, they'd still be worried or scared. And so helps was started so seniors that had protected income would always have someone to call. And we could also prevent or stop the debt collectors from harassing them. So that's why, yeah, once in a while I'll talk to some old codger and explain to him they can't do anything. And he says, well, fine, I'm not going to worry about it. And he's going to deal with it on his own. That's fine. So that's why, Lori. If you don't pay the debt, you might get sued. You get some legal papers. You get scared. What do I do with that? We deal with that problem. Okay. We don't represent people in court, but we're going to tell someone how and why their income is protected. We're going to write a letter to the attorney that sued you, letting them know that you can't afford to pay the debt. We understand they're going to get a judgment. We're going to remind them of the protected nature of your bank account. We're going to call you, explain again why you don't need to go to court and why your bank account is protected. So we're always there, that you can always call us if you have a question or concern. And then our second mission is to educate seniors how to maintain their financial independence. That's why I have these YouTube live videos. So not only do we just protect you from collector harassment, we help you in other areas too. Maybe you have a timeshare. You don't realize you can stop paying and get rid of it. Or maybe you've found out that you've got owe a lot on your car and it's broken down, you can't afford it anymore. Talk to you about how to surrender a car. We'll talk to you about, any number of other issues. We got probably close to 400 or 500 emails on different topics. Emails on, how to get a will, how to protect property for children. Talk about maybe a reverse mortgage. That could make sense for certain seniors. So it's not just protecting you from debt collectors. We do a lot of other things as well. Okay. Yeah. And we tell people that, but if I tell people you can deal with it on your own, a lot of people they simply don't want to deal with it on their own. And I can understand why. So this person from Alabama contacts us and they say they got cancer. They lost their high-paying job, now on Social Security, and have approximately $60,000 in debt. Have just been sued, but they serve my daughter, who is not authorized to act on my behalf and is in the wrong county. Please help. So it sounds like they serve someone not where you live, okay? Even though they may be related to you. Maybe that's where you used to live. So technically, the service may not be proper, okay? And you could challenge that if you wanted to, but if you challenged it and the service was deemed to be improper, then all the creditor has to do is serve you in another way where you're at, okay? And maybe the fact is that you owe the debt, and you know if you're eventually served the correct way, they're going to be able to proceed and get a judgment. So you could fight it if you want. We don't help people do that. It kind of gets complicated, especially if you challenge service. And then in the end, they're going to be able to serve you. Doesn't mean you win the case. Just means they have to serve you in another way where you're at. But you might decide then, well, they served me in this other county. They think that's where I live. If you do nothing, they're just simply going to get a judgment. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, in most states, a judgment can be a lien on property in the county where the judgment is located. In this case, if you live in a different county and you're buying a home in a different county, and they sued you in another county where you don't live and they get a judgment in that other county, that wouldn't be a lien on your property here where you're at now. And we talk about that. So in some, you don't need to file an answer. Could if you want. You can always contest a lawsuit if you want. You can always contest a lawsuit if you want, but most of our clients don't worry about that. You can always call and talk to us. That's what we're here for. So this person, um, they have a VA loan. Excuse me, it was in forbearance. The only way to My only choices are a loan modification or calling on the VA for help. They live in, it looks like South Dakota, in just different disaster areas. 80 and 75, and he's a veteran. But many questions remain. Can we extend our mortgage term to 40 years to further reduce our monthly note? Our outstanding balance on the home loan is 145,000, which is valued at just under 400,000. We have no way to access this equity. Suggestions or assistance will be appreciated. Well, I don't know about getting the loan extended. That's not what we do, but you could call and we could look at it. But you do have a lot of equity in the home. You got $250,000, at least $200,000 equity in the home. And he says, no way to access this equity. Well, depending on the facts, you possibly could get a reverse mortgage on the property, which would pay off the existing mortgage. So you no longer have a mortgage payment. You still own the home. You could still sell it if you want, but you wouldn't have a house payment anymore. If the home is worth 400,000 or more, that very well could be possible. Sometimes a reverse mortgage can be an answer to prayer for seniors. I don't sell reverse mortgages. I don't have any interest in seeing that someone gets a reverse mortgage, but I know enough about them to know that in certain instances, a reverse mortgage can really solve a lot of problems. So we'll talk to this person and maybe we can help them or put them in the right direction so they get help. So this person contacts us from Arizona. It says, there is a $13,000 mortgage balance on my brother's home. Only way I can pay this off and avoid imminent homelessness is by not paying off the balances on my credit card debt. Okay. So apparently she's living with her brother and she's been helping pay the mortgage, but she has a lot of credit card debt. I'm assuming that she's retired, getting Social Security and a pension, because it looks like she's taking care of her brother. It says, I've been here in home caring for him since 2014. And he has advanced dementia. We've made several attempts to add my home to the title, but cannot do it without first paying off the balance on the mortgage. Well, that's not true. A mortgage may say that they restrict you from adding someone's name to the title, but the law doesn't restrict you from doing that. In fact, there's a case that says they cannot do that. Yeah, you could add someone's name to the title of your home as a joint owner with survivorship rights, um, even though the mortgage says you may not be able to do that. You can legally do that. People do it all the time. 46 years of practice. I've never seen a lender ever go after a person that owes on a house because they added someone's name to the title along with them for estate tax purposes. They simply don't do it, and they can't really do it. There's a Supreme Court case on this. I don't remember what it is, but they don't do it. Bottom line is. But now you may not be able to do it because your brother has dementia. You say severe dementia because in order for you to be added to the title of the home, he would have to sign a deed that puts you on the title with him as a joint tenant with survivorship rights or some type of deed that where you would own it together with him. But in order for that to happen, he has to sign it and it has to be notarized. And a notary, if they can tell that the brother has severe dementia, probably isn't going to allow that to happen. They're not going to you're not going to get a signature notarized that you could record it in court. It says here the state will claim the home to pay for any medical expenses that he incurs otherwise. I've invested all of my Social Security over the past dozen years keeping him in his home. I would really appreciate any help. We tell you to contact us and we go over this with you. It's a little complicated, too complicated to answer this over the video like this, but there may be some other pathways for you. Okay. Person contacts us from Oklahoma. It's an existing client. They've been worried for the last month. Maybe I talked to this person. It says they got 700 in Social Security and 1,800 in a federal pension. Oh yeah, I did. I talked to him today. And they got an annuity of about $2,200. Okay, so 17 plus 1,850 is what? A little bit over 2,500 bucks. So what I told him, I said, 3,000 in your, 2,500 times 2 is $5,000. Uh, if you do nothing about the lawsuit, you owe the money, they get a judgment, 5,000 is protected. Okay, they can't touch your bank account. It's going to be okay. Now, the person was also, they were confused about, one of them was an annuity, the other one was a federal pension. And if the federal pension was the 2,200, then 22 plus 2,700 is like 2,900, which means times two means what, $5,800 in the bank account would be protected automatically. Um, if a creditor is granted a judgment because of credit card debt, but I add a child's name to the title ahead of the judgment, can they still file a lien against the property fully owned in Florida? You have to call and talk to us about that. There shouldn't be a problem. We go over it with you. This person writes in, they say, it seems that your video just solved my problem I didn't want to face, but I must accept what you suggested. But how do we deal with our conscience? I'm struggling financially at 80 in Social Security, but my conscience won't let me not pay one of my large monthly bills that I have. If I didn't pay it, I could survive okay then. There's no money at all left over each month to pay for home, car, and even clothes repairs, and or for things that just normally wear out, or for the unexpected or the unplanned for. When I took the loan out, I had a plan to work to pay it, but now physically I can't work. I'm a happy person as long as I live in the moment and ignore my problems. But suddenly I'm finding that ignoring my needs is only making them pile up. Until now, suddenly I've come face to face with a huge pile, and some of it has to be dealt with now. It appears that your advice is what I needed to hear and somehow actually do. 1,000 thank yous and hugs. Okay, a very sweetly worded email. We have a bunch of preloaded emails on different topics. We call them bells and whistles. And one of them, I call it guilt and debt. Okay? And it talks about how to deal with debt issues and not feel guilty. Or how, just a couple of suggestions. Okay, for one thing, all creditors charge interest rates. And one reason they charge interest rates is because they know that a certain percentage of the debt someone's not going to be able to pay. So that's factored into the loan when you made the loan. They know that you might not be able to pay the debt, therefore, their interest will cover them, and they're still making money. Okay, that's why sometimes interest rates are higher for other people than some people than other people, because maybe some people are more at a risk. But no matter where you are, part of the interest rate factors in a risk that you wouldn't be able to pay the debt. So they know you can't pay the debt. But at the same time, if you buy something and agree to pay someone, they default. Creditors default all the time. Maybe you buy something, it breaks or whatever, and you may not have a chance to get recompense for it. So it works both ways. And then we talk a lot about, there's certain scriptures that talk about forgiveness of debt in the Bible, but you don't, I always look at it this way. I think a lot of our clients, the vast majority, they would pay the debt if they were able, but they're simply not able to. That's the way I look at it. If you're able, pay it, but if you can't, you can't. Society protects your income. Lawmakers protect your income because they don't want seniors to go without. They don't want you to cut back on your medicine, Because if you did, you'd get sick, and then society would have to pay money to take care of you. You cut back on the heat, you get pneumonia, you get cold. They don't want that to happen. So they want you to they want you to be able to buy your clothing, buy your adequate food. That's why your income is protected. Okay. Hey, Eric, how big is your beautiful cat? Is he missing you? Probably missing my wife more than me. But I don't think he's missing anyone because one of my granddaughters is a veterinarian, and she's got my cat in Los Angeles, and I think he's pretty happy. My granddaughter says that every night he sleeps on the pillow right next to her. So I think the cat's going to do okay. I'm not too worried about it. But I don't like to think about it. I'm gone for a couple of years in a different place, and I'll be back with my dog or my cat here at some point in the future. So, Richard, or is placing a home in a trust more protection against liens after judgment against own property? It depends. It depends. A lot of time, a lien would be what's called a revocable lien, which means you control the home, and a judgment can still be a lien on the home and still need to be paid. So a lien always isn't the right idea. Often, if you had someone's name on the home with you on the title, like a children or a child, means you own it together with survivorship rights. And then when you pass on, the property automatically is in the children's name. So there's different ways of dealing it. Once again, we have a preloaded email on that, protecting a home for children, that talks about that. Yeah. Well, you don't need to feel guilty. Try not to feel guilty. I mean, there's no reason to. You would if you could. No, you can ask all the questions you want. Sometimes on YouTube Live, we don't get enough questions in. But that's why I have these questions that people ask here that I can read. Okay, this person writes this. I have a court date on October 16th here in Greene County, wherever that is. I owe 950 plus court fees. I'm 64 years old and started receiving my Social Security retirement benefits in August of 2025, a couple months ago. I have custody of two minor children. I watched your video on YouTube. I desperately need representation to help with this overwhelming amount of money I owe through Fingerhut subscription back in 2020. I bought a computer to help my son during the pandemic to help him with some schooling. I was making monthly payments until I acquired COVID, then loss of job. I got further and further behind on payments, and the interest kept piling up more and more with the original price of the computer. Will you please offer me some advice about this matter? Coming up, well, okay. You get Social Security retirement. You don't need to do anything. If they sue and get a judgment, they can't touch your Social Security, as I've explained. Yes, how can I become a member? Yeah, if you're listening to me first time, or you've listened to us a couple times and you're not a member, just call us on the phone, 855-435-7787. We're going to ask you some questions, and we're going to read you what we do. And if you decide to enroll, then you can do that. You don't have to pay any money up front. Payment doesn't begin until 30 or 60 days down the road. And it's minimal amount. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help. And we're going to explain about the lawsuit, why you don't need to go to court. And you probably have a lot of other debt you're not going to need to worry about. Okay? So you're going to be fine. Don't need to worry. Person writes in, they say, I am a veteran, not a senior, but I'm disabled and I have PTSD. I do work often on and owe a large amount of debt. Can you help me? The answer is yes. Your Social Security disability is protected. Okay. And if you're working, getting a little bit of money now and then, no one's going to be able to, even if they sue you, they're not going to be able to take that money. We'll explain why that won't be an issue. So yeah, that person can call us. We'll go over this with them. We'll explain to them why they're going to be okay. And they're not going to need to worry. Do you have any articles or suggested reading for mental health through this debt struggle? Well, I do have a letter that we have, a couple of them. One of them, I have a bunch of scriptures on it. I think it's pretty good. You're from the Old Testament, maybe a few from the New Testament, that talk about forgiveness of debt. Okay. That, I think that could help someone. Call us and we'll send that to you. I talk to people, that have deal with guilt and debt, and I explain to them, I think, eventually that guilt's going to go away. You're going to realize that you can't pay it. They've been paid. You're part of helps, and you're not going to feel bad. Maybe you feel bad at the beginning, but it's going to go away. You're not going to feel bad. So I wouldn't worry about it, Wendy, okay? And you can always call and talk to us. We'll go over this with you. What happens if you have a homestead property and they get a lien because of a judgment? If you sell the home in that Montana is supposed to protect up to 500,000. Does it have any effect? Well, it depends on state law. I'd have to look at it. Some states, the homestead protection is automatic, okay, without you having to do anything. In some states, you have to file some paperwork with the court to protect it. Some states, the homestead comes into effect if you file bankruptcy. You have to call and talk to us. We go over it with you. They're not going to take your home. You're not going to lose it. I was served a civil summons today about a year after defaulting on a credit card. That's pretty common. If you're going to get sued, and you may not, but you possibly could, it could easily take at least a year after you stop making a payment before they think about suing you. So if I understand correctly, I can just ignore this and let the default judgment happen. I am a client on Social Security, but this is a little scary to get these papers served. I understand that it's scary to get served. That's one reason that help service is ongoing. So when you enroll in helps, a lot of our clients, they've never been sued. They just stop making the payments, but they may get sued later down the road. But you're a client ongoing. So when you do get sued, you get us a copy of the lawsuit. We usually just need the first 3 or 4 pages. We're going to explain to you why you don't need to go to court, why you're going to be okay. We're going to send a letter to the attorney who sued you, letting them know your income is protected. And once again, you talk to us. If you get other paperwork, you get it to us. We'll go over it with you. But yeah, if you've never been sued before, it can get a little scary. But you don't need to be scared because they can't do anything to you. Okay? So we're not going to pour gas on the fire by trying to scare you because you've been sued. Sometimes debt collectors or will try to scare, or creditors or other people or articles will scare seniors thinking, oh boy, if you get sued, you got to get an attorney and all that, which you don't have to. Okay? You're going to be fine. Okay. Person writes in, they say, now that I'm not pressured to pay my debt, I can finally get needed oral surgery, but I now have to save up for it. Can my regular savings account be garnished? Thank you so much for all your videos. I learned so much. Well, okay. You don't have to worry about anything being garnished unless someone sued you and had a judgment. Okay. So, and then if the money that went into your savings account came from Social Security, uh, it's still protected, just not automatically. So if you were worried about a lawsuit and being garnished, you could take the money that you've saved from your Social Security for your oral surgery and either keep it in cash, preloaded debit cards, um, you know, or a money order, or maybe in someone else's name that you trust, but you don't have to worry about it unless you've been sued. But once again, if it came from Social Security, even if you did get sued and it was held up, you can file paperwork to get the money released. So Seti asked, my credit card, I stopped paying credit card under my husband's name. I have credit card from the same company in my name that is current. Should I stop on that credit card also? You don't have to, because your credit is separate from your husband. So I don't see that the credit card companies ever tie in. If one spouse doesn't pay the debt and the other spouse is concurrently on everything, they're not going to cut you off. Okay. There's a lot of instances where there's one spouse that has financial problems and the other spouse is perfectly okay. And the law is pretty clear that your credit isn't combined with your husband or your wife. It's your credit individually. So if you didn't want to pay that credit card debt, you could stop it. But if you want to keep that credit, you could keep paying that credit card and preserve that credit. It's up to you. Okay, just got a couple more minutes. I think I'll do one more here before we quit for the day. Person says, good morning, sir. I filed to cancel with AmeriCorps. Who's AmeriCorps? They're one of a gazillion different debt management or debt settlement companies. They go on to say, I'm waiting for a refund. They have to do an audit first on the money they have from me. Man, they don't have to do an audit. They could just send it back to you. Even now, they never started anything for me. So once I get the refund, I would like to have you help me with the creditors if it's okay with you. You don't need to wait. You can enroll right now. Let me know what you need from my creditors, personal loans, and I'll get it to you. When you enroll, all you need is a name, address, and account number. We don't need the balance. Don't care about the balance. Thank you again for letting me know about my protection of my money so I can stop stressing so much. Yeah, if you're out there stressing, you don't need to stress. Why? Well, I've told you why. Your income is protected. Your assets are protected. Creditors can't do anything to you. And I told you the means by which creditor harassment can be stopped. You don't need to worry. So yes, thank you so much for these broadcasts. I guess they help so much. I will be joining soon. Yeah, we're not going to stop anything here. It helps. We're helping too many people. Okay. So it's been an hour. I want to thank you for your participation. Press the like button, subscribe to our channel, and if you have any questions, you call us on the phone or email us. You can get on our website, www.helpsishere.org. You can fill out a form there if you want, or call us directly on the phone. I promise you, after you talk to us, you're going to feel a lot better. Okay, God bless, and I will talk to you at the same time tomorrow. Have a great day.